Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I just want to share again, continue my experience of my travel to Bali and Singapore. So today I'll share about spending in Singapore specifically. Firstly, what a shock it was getting to Singapore, and the exchange rate is much strong. So, okay, hold on. Let me rewind. South African rand is much weaker to the Singapore dollar. So, literally came from the millions that we held in our hands. And I say we because remember, again, I traveled with an agent. Yes, I was a solo traveler, but in a group trip. So, with the Bali and Singapore experience, only a few of us traveled to Singapore. So, we chose the option of both countries versus some people who chose only the Bali option, meaning that those that did not choose the Singapore option stayed in Bali for an additional 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but it's an additional 3 days. So we get to Singapore. Singapore, firstly, besides the money, it is a beautiful place. So from the airport in itself, is a lovely attraction, and you don't have to pay anything to explore the airport itself. So if you are in Singapore at some point, or if it's on your bucket list, just know that first things first, you can have a nice tour of the actual airport. You basically take the bus, or I think there's also a train out, but I'm not sure where you get the train. But you take a bus to Terminal 1. And when you get to Terminal 1, that's where you get to see the nice garden set up, and there's a nice waterfall that's like beautiful. So that firstly is free. So besides the fact that obviously the flights were booked by the agent, which obviously is a certain cost, and obviously if you're going alone, perhaps you obviously have that cost to consider. But just as you arrive in Singapore, first things first, you explore the airport. It's beautiful. That is free, of course. Then, in terms of the money, so I think after the tour, we went to our hotel and then just obviously freshened up a bit, and then we were now gonna tour the actual city. We go obviously again, just like in Bali, in Singapore as well, you go with your South African. Oh, a reminder, this is from a South African context because I found that it was hard to kind of find the information around spending with your South African card, or where do you exchange and all of that. So in a South African context again, right? So you can go with your debit or credit card and you can withdraw at their ATM. Like I said, their Singapore dollar has more, it's stronger than our South African rand. So basically, for more or less the same amount that we would do in Bali, so about 2,000 plus, we only got 150 Singapore dollars for something that's similar to like the 2.5, 2.9 that we would do in Bali. So the difference from a stack to literally three notes, $50 notes of Singapore. So it was like, no, we came to an expensive place. So that was one shocker. So again, you always gonna check you should check your exchange rate in terms of what's the ZAR to the Singapore dollar. One thing one of the travelers almost did was, so because let's say for example you want to withdraw 2,000 rand, and then you go to the machine and you punch in 2,000, which means you are saying you want to withdraw 2,000 Singapore dollars. So don't make the mistake. So when you get to an ATM that is of that country, you literally convert and then you take out that, like for example, if 2,000 is equal to 150 Singapore dollars. When you get to the ATM, just type in 150, 150, which means 150 Singapore dollars, and it'll just sort of break it down for you as to how much you actually withdrawing from your actual account. So don't make that mistake. Withdraw in their currency, even though you are actually from South Africa, if you get what I mean, right? So that was one shocker. Then anyway, we toured the city. So to tour the city, we had a driver, and I think it was 50 Singapore dollars for us to then tour the city so for the person to take us around. So in terms of touring the city, it's obviously free. There's the garden. The garden has, so you can go in the afternoon, but also as you go in the evening, they've got this light show at the garden. There is the water show as well. So near the mall, the big mall, I think it's Marina Sands. Near the mall, you go there in the evening, you see a nice water show, and I think it's per hour, if I'm not mistaken. Once it gets dark, I think it's per hour that they will play the water show. And then we didn't get to see that statue in the evening. Apparently, it also has a nice view in the evening. And with the garden as well, I think you can also do a tour inside and take the lifts up, which we didn't get to do, so I'm not sure how much that is. So yeah, in terms of spending, you expect to spend the 50 Singapore dollars for that city tour. Cool. Next day, then the activities that we had with the activities that we had in Singapore were not exactly included in the package. So 3 of us had decided to do the Universal Studios. For me, the highlight. So you expect to pay 83. So at the time that I traveled, I don't know, obviously as time goes, it'll probably go up because we had envisaged that it would be 1,200 in rands. We paid 83 Singapore dollars for entrance, and it allows you to all the rides. If ever you want to then, so there's the express that they have additionally. I think it's about 100 Singapore dollars or an additional $83. So dollars, Singapore dollars, please. Please follow with me because yeah, I might say dollars when I mean Singapore dollars. So it was $83 to enter. So you get like this ticket that you swipe in order for you to enter. And then that allows you into everything. So don't make the mistake of thinking, because also we were confused when we were told there's an additional amount for all the rides. So there's a ticket that you can pay additionally for express. So express meaning you always be in front of the queue. So there's 2 types. There's one that allows you to go past, so go to the front of the queue only once per ride. And then there's another one, I forgot how much that one is. Then there's another one where it's an express for every time that you want to go on a ride. So the rides there are so nice that I think we repeated 3 I think 3 rides we did twice. That's how nice they are. And then there was one that was sort of like underwhelming. It's like if you go to seat is like a carriage, something like that. It was a bit underwhelming. Then there's something like the Anaconda. I think there's 2 of those. Then there was also one that was underwhelming as well, where you just go around. And then there was one at the Mummies or Egyptian. So there's so much to do there. Okay, let's go back to the spending. $83 to get in, which covers everything. Of course, you might be hungry or whatever. There are food stalls. We resorted to slushies. I think for most of our time inside there. And then once we then exited, there's also like food trucks there, and we had a nice burger meal for like $12, I think. So it's not bad when you think about it in terms of their dollars. Like for example, $12 gets you a nice burger meal. But if you now convert it to, let's say, money, you then stress yourself. So once you're there, immerse yourself in the fact that you're spending dollars, because some things are like $12, some things are like $10, $8. So it feels like being in South Africa and paying 12 Rand. Yes, it's not the same value, but once you're there and you immerse yourself, it feels like, oh, it's not that bad because they are spending in dollars. It's bad how it sounds bad when you now convert, because yeah, it's a lot. So anyway, so you expect to pay $83 going in. You're greeted by merchandise stores. There's merch for Hello Kitty, Minions, what else? Universal Studios merchandise that just says Universal Studio. I I did spend like a crazy amount on a nice t-shirt that I found for my little one. It was expensive when you're converted to South African. So if you can have a budget in place for merchandise, obviously it's in their Singapore dollars, so you pay anything from $12 to around $36 and maybe more, because I only looked at the few things that I did like. I think I bought a t-shirt for my son, and I bought a nice keyring, or like a charm keyring at Hello Kitty. Trust me, you could end up on I blew it if you are not careful, because everything is so nice, everything is beautiful, everything wants you to buy. So you must just be careful about that. But again, once you spend your $83, you are in, and it's for the whole day, because there's so much to do there. So prepare to spend a whole day at Universal Studio. So that place has more. So besides Universal Studios, there are more places to see. And I think you just need a full day for each, if I think of it. Because like once we exited, we saw like the whole map of the place. And we just were at Universal Studios. There was so much more. And I think there's cable cars at one of the areas. So yeah, I mean, that is what we spent in terms of Universal Studios, and around $12 for like a nice burger meal. And then obviously we then went to the mall. At the mall, you expect to spend what you want to spend, really, because I think we just went to one store because one of the ladies needed something, and we found a nice sale. And I think I just bought like a lotion, a nice body lotion that was, I think it was $8, if I'm not mistaken. It's $80 for that. So yeah, besides Universal Studios, you literally spend, so we spent at Universal Studios, we spent the $50 for the city tour, so that we could be taken around by the guy. But yeah, and then in terms of the hotel, obviously the hotel offers breakfast, so you don't spend on breakfast. However, you do need to spend on obviously moving around. So our tour guide was only there for the first day for the city tour, and he also then took us to get to the airport when we were leaving, and the airport transfers were covered, so we didn't have to spend on that. However, the downside that we did experience was when we were traveling back. I mentioned in my previous video that if you do happen to go back to Bali, just know that you will have to pay another visa, because you're getting into the country again, because it's a how do you put it? It is a one-time entry visa, meaning even though it's valid for 30 days, once you come back, you have to pay the visa again. The only time that you do not pay the visa again is if you transferring flights. So if you're getting into Bali and you on the same flight, so let's say for example you are flying in the SA context, if you're fly SA fare from Johannesburg to Durban, and for some reason it was also taking you to the next location. So if we were traveling from Singapore to Bali on the same flight, then we wouldn't have to pay, because then it's not like we are staying in Bali. But we had the unfortunate experience where it seemed like our travel agent was not able to secure flights directly from Singapore to Dubai. So we had to do via Bali. And because of that, we needed to spend extra on the visa, which was not something we had planned for. So be mindful of that. If somehow you don't find flights and you do have to fly through Bali, let's say you are doing 2 countries, just know that you will have to spend again on the entry into Bali. And then the other thing was, the flight going back to Bali had lesser in terms of how much we could check in. So the nightmare. And I don't know, their scale suspect, guys. Their scale, oh my gosh, suspect. Because I put my bag on the scale and I think it was 1 extra and I had to pay for that. They charge, how much again? Is it 30? I think they charge 30 Singapore dollars per extra kgs. And the other ladies also had to pay a bit more. So you have to cater for that. So make sure you cater for extra kgs. If possible, yeah, limit your baggage. But then it was hard, because when you travel from Joburg to the flight that we took, Joburg, Dubai to Bali, it had more allowance versus coming back. So like, I don't know how you would then lessen your luggage if you, yeah, I think you get what I'm trying to say. It would have been difficult to measure that. So I guess you can cater or put an amount aside, knowing that you have additional if that happens to you, you know. So that's another thing. Then my travel from Bali to Singapore, my bag got damaged. So please have travel insurance. I actually this week managed to get a new bag because I had travel insurance and it was covered. However, unfortunately, I've never had this happen. I'm only starting to really travel now. So it happened, and I didn't know that within 3 days I supposed to have reported it to the airline, and I think they would have done something about it. However, thank goodness I did have travel insurance. So I managed to claim from my travel insurance, and I managed to get a new bag. So do have travel insurance. It's a once-off amount that they take according to the package that you choose for your travel insurance, and they cover you for the period of you having been gone. I think I paid 800 and something once off. So also note that as part of your travel, have travel insurance, because you don't know what might happen. Besides a bag, hopefully not, God forbid, but there can be sickness, anything can happen, and travel insurance is important. So for me, it worked best because I did have travel insurance, and now I was able to get a new bag because they did damage my bag. I mean, one of the wheels came off and it's actually torn. So it was a flight from Bali to Singapore where my bag got damaged. But all the way traveling from Joburg to Bali, nothing happened to my bag. And then what I did was when I got to Bali, when we're now traveling back home, I then ensured that I wrapped my bag, just for the fact that it was already a bit it was not in a good shape. I think the first flight was the wheel and a bit of a crack, and I think obviously because the crack was already there, I felt like you know what, we're now traveling longer, let me wrap my bag in order to then get to Joburg. And then obviously I did acknowledge that my wheel was off, because obviously I guess they didn't want to have to now cover the fact that a wheel is off. But I did let them know, yes, it was in another flight. And then I then claimed from insurance. I wasn't even sure that it's covered. I had to reread my documents, and then I processed everything with them. And man, thankfully they processed everything and they covered the bag. Yes, they deduct excess, but I have a new bag at least because I had travel insurance. So do make provision for travel insurance in your budget. So let me run through that again. I've spoken a whole lot. So traveling to Singapore. So yes, I did Singapore and Bali, but just things that you should consider when traveling to Singapore. Maybe you're not going for too long. You will have to obviously take note of the fact that their currency is stronger than our South African rand. So you will get lesser in terms of money compared to what you would get in South Africa. So for example, 2,000 rand might get you like $100 or 150 depending. So take note of that. You will spend on a city tour, but most of the places, the airport tour, the city itself, you don't pay anything to walk around the city, sightsee. But however, you will perhaps pay if you have like a driver giving you the tour or taking you around the different places in Singapore. Then Universal Studios, if you are going to Universal Studios, at the time that I traveled, it was $83 to enter, 83 Singapore dollars for entry. So that's another thing. And then obviously breakfast is covered at the hotel if you're staying in a hotel. However, for lunch and whatever else, you might have to have a budget in place for that. Again, if you are going to Universal Studios, just take note there's merch that is for sale, so maybe you will spend on that. Travel insurance is important, even if you're not going to Singapore, for any country for that matter. Travel insurance is important. And then take note of the baggage allowance at each flight. If you're happening to travel away, like one flight allows you more, just double check the other flights, because then you will have to make provision for paying extra in order to then obviously have your checked in bags taken care of. So if you exceed the limit, you do pay an additional amount, and it's a heavy fee. So just make provision for that. So yeah, those are the costs that you should consider when you are traveling to Singapore. But honestly, I have had to merge Bali and Singapore. Again, if you do not happen to get flights directly from Singapore, Dubai to Johannesburg, or any other airport in SA, just take note that if you do have to go via Bali or any other country that requires a visa, there might be a need to pay a visa going in. So Bali in this instance, obviously I'm not sure of other countries, Bali in this instance for South African, there's a visa that you pay as you get there. So if you happen to fly through Bali, you will have to take into consideration that you will have to pay for a visa, even though you're not staying, you are just passing through. So just take note of those things. Hopefully that law will change, because like it doesn't make sense if I'm getting in to leave to pay for a 30-day visa. However, that's the law that they currently had, or they had at the time that we traveled. So yeah, I hope this is helpful. Please do travel. Like I say again, just to encourage someone out there. I came from a place where I was totally indebted, landed up in debt review, happened to work my way out of that, and now I'm at a place where I can save for stuff like travel and be able to travel, and not using debt to travel, saving up for these things so that you can travel in peace, enjoy it. Because obviously if you do use debt, maybe a lot of debt, you might not enjoy it, or you will enjoy it only for a time just to come back in order to cover the debt. So save up for these moments, because again, they say memories live on, and the money we can make back, right? So we come back, we work in our jobs, we do our different businesses that we have, and we save again to travel again. So I hope it's helpful to someone who has Singapore on their bucket list. And yeah, man, please, let's travel, and yeah, share it with the next person. Maybe you guys are planning a group trip or whatever, share it with someone else who would find this helpful. So until the next one, bye.